The second process of the build, acquire and implement domain, called manage requirements definition, has 4 practices. The first practice is to define and maintain business requirements. From a RACI charts perspective, the entities that are responsible include the business process owners, the project management office, and the head of IT development. The entity that is held accountable is the program steering committee. The practice receives several inputs that include the information architecture model from the BAI02 process, the solution development guidance from the BAI03 process, and the acceptance criteria from the BAI11 process. It generates 3 outputs, which are the requirements definition repository to be used by several BAI processes, the confirmed acceptance criteria to be used by several BAI processes as well, and the record of requirement change requests to be used by the BAI3 process. The activities involved in this practice include establishing the requirements definition procedure and a requirements repository. The business requirements is to be based on the gap that should be filled between the current and desired states and capabilities. All the stakeholder requirements and their acceptance criteria should be taken into consideration. The functional and technical requirements should be validated and prioritized, and the requirements changes should be tracked and controlled. The second practice is to perform feasibility studies and identify alternative solutions. The entities that are responsible include the business executives, the project management office, and the head of IT development. The entity that is held accountable is the program steering committee. The practice receives several inputs that include the solution development guidance from the BAI03 process, the supplier catalog from the BAI10 process, and the acceptance criteria from the BAI11 process. It generates 2 outputs, which are the feasibility study report to be used by the BAI3 process, and the high-level acquisition to be used by the BAI10 and BAI3 processes. The activities involved in this practice include defining and executing a feasibility study that covers the alternative solutions that would satisfy the requirements. The system acquisition or development actions should be identified, and the alternative solutions should be evaluated. This should be translated into a high-level acquisition and development plan. The third practice is to manage the requirements risk. The entities that are responsible include the business process owners, the chief information officer, and the chief risk officer. The entity that is held accountable is the program steering committee. The practice receives no inputs from internal or external sources, but generates 2 outputs, which are the requirements risk register, and the risk mitigation actions, both to be used by several BAI processes. The activities involved in this practice include creating a functional and technical requirements list, having consulted all the relevant stakeholders. The risks associated with the requirements should be analyzed and prioritized, and mitigation actions should be identified. The fourth and last practice is to obtain approval of requirements and solutions. The entities responsible for this practice are the business executives, the business process owners, and the project management office. The entity that is held accountable is the program steering committee. The practice receives 1 input, which is the quality management plan from the BAI1 process, and it generates 2 outputs, which are the approval of requirements to be used by the BAI3 process, and the approved quality reviews to be used by the BAI11 process. The activities involved in this practice include ensuring that the business owners make the final decision in regards to the preferred solution and acquisition approach. Feedback from the relevant stakeholders should be coordinated, and if needed, the sign-off for the proposed approach should be obtained. Quality reviews should be performed during each stage of the related projects, and compared against the original criteria. Other sources that provide further insights into this process include the ITIL framework.